He soon became well known within Berlin and beyond for his unconventional treatments in relatively minor conditions, specializing in bacterial medicine as well as the treatment of sexually transmitted diseases. He was also renowned amongst Berlin's elite for his vitamin injections, which provided undernourished patients with a much-needed boost to their immune or metabolic systems, and his fondness for the use of the needle later prompted Hermann Goering to give him the nickname Reich Injection Master. Many of the most common illegal drugs used throughout the world today were first discovered or synthesized in 19th century Germany, including morphine, cocaine, heroin, and amphetamines, to name a famous few, and some of their inventors even received Nobel Prizes for chemistry. However, the short-term benefits of their use as well as their money-making potential were all that mattered, leading to these powerful narcotics entering the everyday lives of people throughout the Western world, often in colourful, attractive packaging, which promised to cure consumers' ailments. Morphine-based products, for example, were often used to calm people's nerves, and drinks including one famous syrup-based soft drink even contained cocaine, which upon consumption lifted a person's energy levels and mood, but also fueled sales through its addictiveness. All of these innovations and inventions, combined with Germany's characteristically efficient industrial might, soon made the country the center of the world's drug production, and despite its economy being severely weakened after World War I, its chemical industry remained strong. By the late 1920s and early 30s, German cocaine was also a multi-million mark industry, as the country produced around 80% of the world's supply of the drug, involving the mass import of South American coca leaves for processing. After the Nazi Party came to power in Germany in 1933, a clampdown was initiated on drug consumption throughout Germany, leading to people being sent to concentration camps for excessive usage or dealing, and the population at large became encouraged to inform on those suspected of abusing substances. These measures also included the restriction of the advertising of alcohol and tobacco in public, as well as the advertising of the branded hard drugs which had been so readily available only a few years before. However, over the coming years, as Adolf Hitler's physical and mental health deteriorated, Morell would eventually administer the Führer with as many as 24 injections or drug doses a day, consisting in total of some 70 to 80 different medications, some of which we know today to be highly dangerous or addictive. Whatever else Morell was, he was certainly studious in his record keeping, and it is due to this habit that we know about the medication he prescribed Adolf Hitler, as he kept a daily journal which detailed every meeting he had with the Führer, whom he referred to as Patient A, along with every medication, harmless or otherwise, he introduced into his bloodstream and digestive system. Even though the production and sale of more traditional drugs such as cocaine had been restricted in the early years of Nazi rule, man-made drugs such as amphetamines have been relatively untouched, resulting in a boom during the early to mid-1930s. This led to research being undertaken in new forms of the stimulant, which was in part inspired by the widespread usage during the 1936 Berlin Olympics of the American-made amphetamine Benzedrine, which was an entirely legal performance-enhancing drug used by athletes at the time. This research then culminated in 1937 in Germany's first methamphetamine being developed and then branded as Pervitin, which would over the coming years become the drug of choice of the entire Third Reich. The effect of this drug upon consumption was to place the customer on a state of high alertness, euphoria, and increased energy for as long as 12 to 18 hours, and also suppress the appetite, which is the reason that amphetamines are still used in some countries to aid weight loss. A widespread marketing campaign was then launched throughout Germany, in which Pervitin was hailed as a cure for depression, low energy levels, and low blood pressure, to name but a few, and free samples were sent out en masse to hospitals and medical practices throughout the country to drum up potential business. This miracle drug, which was meant to cure all ills and replace all other drugs, would come to have a massive effect on the population of the Third Reich and its armed forces, as its usage would become widespread, resulting in hundreds of millions of tablets being mass-produced and distributed over the coming years. It is also no exaggeration to say that methamphetamine usage penetrated every level of German society. Doctors, students, mothers, office workers, and labourers took the drug in the shape of Pervitin in their millions, and it was even marketed in everyday consumables such as chocolate, often at dangerous doses. However, the myth that the German army was unstoppable may have had some basis in fact, as drugs, and in particular methamphetamines, would become widespread in its armed forces during the forthcoming invasion of France and beyond. The usage of Pervitin had been under consideration for some time in the Wehrmacht, and experiments have been conducted under the supervision of Dr. Otto Friedrich Ranke, who was a Director General of Defense Physiology at Berlin's Academy of Military Medicine. This research resulted, after approval was given by the Wehrmacht Commander-in-Chief, Walter von Brauchitsch, in the so-called Stimulant Decree of April 1940, in which Pervitin was distributed to army doctors in the lead-up to the planned invasion, who then handed out the drug to the frontline troops. This measure has, until recently, been largely ignored or even forgotten by many historians, but it must, given the sheer number of drugs involved, have been one of the deciding factors in what would become one of the most famous and successful military invasions in the entire history of warfare. The use of Pervitin during the attack, which was launched in May of 1940, meant that entire tank divisions, as well as Luftwaffe squadrons, went for days without any sleep whatsoever, meaning that Hitler's Wehrmacht, whose aim was to drive towards the English Channel after breaching French lines, were able to keep going, and as a result, further compounded any Allied efforts to stop them. In the mass consumption of Pervitin, the German army had become the first in history to use the taking of drugs to aid its effectiveness, which would, after World War II, be studied and copied by the British and Americans, amongst others. Giesing, however, soon became concerned that his patient was becoming addicted to cocaine, and in early October 1944 refused to administer the drug again until Hitler had been given a full medical checkup. The Führer reluctantly agreed, and after the examinations and tests were done, Hitler insisted that his doctor alleviate the pressure in his head by giving him another dose of the drug. Giesing did so, but administered such a high dose that, according to the doctor's own accounts, Hitler fell to the floor and suffered near respiratory failure. In short, if Giesing's accounts are true, Adolf Hitler nearly died of a cocaine overdose. After this near-fatal incident, Hitler seems to have given up cocaine and instead returned to his old friend Eucadol, upon which he quickly became dependent over the winter of 1944 to 1945. By this time, the Führer's arms were covered in lines of pus-filled scabs known as track marks, due to the sheer number of injections he was receiving, and combined with this, he also suffered from convulsions, constipation, and insomnia, not to mention his emotional or psychological problems, which were no doubt massive. In short, during the winter and spring of 1945, the drugs which flowed through the Führer's veins included Eucadol, methamphetamine in the shape of Vitamoltin and Pervitin, morphine, Mutaflor, and bromnervicid, amongst other less potent substances. It is unclear whether Theodor Morell administered Adolf Hitler with such dangerous concoctions of drugs out of ignorance or desperation, as he either had no knowledge of their potential dangers, or on the other hand, was simply attempting to provide his master with short-term fixes to his health in the shape of hard drugs, in full knowledge that no cure was possible. Until recently, the full scale of drug taking in the Third Reich has been relatively unknown. However, uncovered records including Theodor Morell's accounts of his treatment of Adolf Hitler show that narcotic consumption in the Third Reich was widespread.